activities.
Hello and welcome to this special broadcast on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's 3-day visit to Australia. He reached Australia yesterday, and since then we've seen a lot in terms of the warm reception that he got from the Indian diaspora and how Indian cultural performances particularly, and also the sort of unity that we saw in terms of culture of Australia and India greeted Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and today of course the focus was on the CEO's forum. Prime Minister Narendra Modi as well as the Australian Prime Minister was there to address that particular forum, and the focus was also on forging a new economic roadmap for both the countries. Besides that, the Prime Minister also met one of the former Prime Ministers of Australia. We'll tell you all that in just a bit, and I'm Munmun Bhattacharya. With me is my colleague Shubhendu Ghosh.
Thank you, Munmun. Yes, good morning. Welcome, Namaskar. Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the second leg of his three-nation visit in Australia from 8th to 10th of July. A host of issues in focus, Munmun, in this visit. Australia happens to be a very close strategic partner for India, whether we talk about at the bilateral level or the region of the Indo-Pacific as a whole. There's a great focus on the three E's this time. It's energy, economics and education, and the manner in which partnerships could be in fact taken forward. Also the changing dynamics of the Quad. We'll have to see how the three countries, in particular India, Australia and Japan, articulate the new realities. And meanwhile, delegation level talks will take place between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Prime Minister Anthony Albanese of Australia. All those updates and more. Let's begin.
So Prime Minister Narendra Modi is visiting Australia on the second leg of his three-nation tour. Beginning the packed day of diplomatic engagements, PM Modi and his Australian counterpart Anthony Albanese addressed the Australia-India CEOs Forum in Melbourne.
Prime Minister highlighted India's strong economic growth, reform-driven business environment and expanding innovation ecosystem. He invited Australian businesses to partner in India's growth story across sectors including manufacturing, clean energy, critical minerals, AI, fintech, infrastructure and digital economy.
Prime Minister noted that India's scale and Australia's expertise make for a win-win partnership. The forum, a part of the annual Leaders Summit, aims to harness complementarities between the world's fastest growing major economy, India, as well as Australia.
Earlier, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Prime Minister Anthony Albanese addressed the Economic Roadmap Business Event, a gathering of over 200 CEOs and business leaders from both sides. Prime Minister highlighted the natural synergies between India and Australia, called for an early conclusion of the trade agreement (CETA). He encouraged businesses to work together in sectors including critical minerals, semiconductors, AI, that's artificial intelligence, EV, defense, and urge Indian states and Australian provinces to build stronger economic partnerships.
दुनिया अनसर्टेनिटी, सप्लाई चेन डिसरप्शन और एनर्जी क्राइसिस के दौर से गुजर रही है। ऐसे समय में भारत और ऑस्ट्रेलिया का नेचुरल और ट्रस्टेड पार्टनर के रूप में आगे बढ़ना स्वाभाविक भी है और आवश्यक भी है। बीते वर्षों में हमने दोनों देशों की क्षमताओं के साथ भावी साझेदारी का एक मजबूत फ्रेमवर्क तैयार किया है। साल 2022 में रिकॉर्ड समय में किए गए एक्टा समझौते से हमारी आर्थिक साझेदारी और सशक्त हुई है। इसके लागू होने के बाद भारत से ऑस्ट्रेलिया को एक्सपोर्ट डबल हुआ है और दोनों देशों के बिजनेसेस को नए मार्केट एक्सेस इसका लाभ मिला है। लेकिन हम यही नहीं रुके रहे। अब हम व्यापक सीका समझौता करने की तरफ आगे बढ़ रहे हैं। इन प्रयासों से दोनों देशों की सरकारों ने एक नया रनवे तैयार किया है। अब इस पर इन्वेस्टमेंट और इनोवेशन का विमान उड़ान भरने के लिए तैयार है और आप सभी को इसे नई ऊंचाई पर ले जाना है।
So the roadmap for the economic future has been laid out there, and the Prime Minister also called for deeper collaboration, as he suggested identifying focused state-to-state and sector-to-sector partnerships between India and Australia.
And he reaffirmed a commitment to elevating bilateral business ties to greater heights.
मेरा सुझाव है कि हम आने वाले समय में कुछ फोकस स्टेट टू स्टेट और सेक्टर टू सेक्टर पार्टनरशिप की पहचान करें और उन्हें आगे ले जाने के लिए रणनीति बनाएं। फ्रेंड्स, लोकतांत्रिक मूल्यों और इंडो पैसिफिक साझा विजन के आधार पर हमारे बीच गहरा स्ट्रेटेजिक कन्वर्जेंस बना है। हम अपनी बिजनेस पार्टनरशिप को नई ऊंचाइयों पर ले जाने के लिए प्रतिबद्ध हैं।
Amid global uncertainty, supply chain disruptions and energy crisis, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese of Australia declared India and Australia as natural trusted partners, highlighting record progress since 2022. He emphasized the enhanced market access for businesses of both the nations.
And Anthony Albanese also called for a deeper collaboration to build resilient and prosperous economies in the Indo-Pacific. Take a listen.
Towards the end of the 20th century, both Australia and India underwent a period of profound change and reform, from a narrow foreign policy to creative, multilateral diplomacy, from inward-looking, high-tariff economies to a new prosperity powered by trade and growth and engagement in our region. Yet while both Australia and India embarked on similar journeys with shared objectives at the same time, we were making these changes in parallel rather than in partnership. For all the natural affinity of our histories and cultures, for all the broad affection between our peoples, the relationship between our countries was underdone. It was underexplored and it was under-examined. In the last decade or so, that has certainly changed for the better. Prime Minister Modi, your leadership and your personal engagement with Australia has been absolutely central to this change.
And Prime Minister Albanese highlighted the transformation of bilateral ties between India and Australia. He noted that towards the end of the 20th century, both nations shifted from narrow foreign policies and high tariff economies to creative multilateral diplomacy and shared prosperity.
He also praised the aspirational Indian diaspora for contributing with innovation, entrepreneurship and community spirit in the development of Australia.
Of Australian Indian companies contributing to the growth and success of both of our nations. Central to every single one of these success stories is the bond between our people. Every time I have visited India, whether it be as a backpacker back in 1991 or as Prime Minister, where I stayed in slightly better hotels, I have been welcomed with extraordinarily warm and generous engagement with people. Those same bonds of friendship shine through in our Australian Indian diaspora and the businesses which are here today. More than 1 million Australians trace their heritage to India. And this great global city, Melbourne, has been enriched by the hard work and aspiration of our nation's largest Indian diaspora. People who've come to Australia seeking a better life for themselves and their families and have made this a better country for all of us, but always hanging on to the heritage of the country of your birth and being proud of where you have come from, as well as being proud Australians. That's what Australian multiculturalism is. Not a theory, not something up for debate, just something which is. Your entrepreneurship and innovation makes our economy more productive and more dynamic. Your kindness, your community spirit and your love of this country, your home, lifts us all up. As leaders, Prime Minister Modi and I are always looking to deepen and diversify the connections between our nations. We negotiate and sign agreements, we design and update plans. But in the end, it is our people, the people of India and the people of Australia, who make the words a bond. You are the custodians of the India and Australia relationship. And everything that we see here today is proof that the future is indeed in very, very good hands.
So like Albanese said, the future is in very good hands, and a delightful display of friendship was also witnessed during the India-Australia CEOs Forum in Melbourne. You can see those visuals on your screens. Both the Prime Ministers, Narendra Modi and Anthony Albanese, took a selfie together. The two leaders were seen smiling warmly as they posed for a casual photograph.
And the events of the day. So far, Prime Minister Modi met heads of leading Australian universities at India-Australia CEOs Forum in Melbourne on Thursday. The high-level gathering brought together business leaders, policymakers and education dignitaries to advance bilateral ties between the two nations.
Education being a significant pillar of the relationship, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi also held an interaction with former Prime Minister Scott Morrison. The two leaders discussed the significant progress made in the India-Australia Comprehensive Strategic Partnership.
They warmly recalled significant strides made in India-Australia ties during Morrison's tenure that continues to strengthen the bonds between the peoples of India and Australia.
Ties have been on an upswing across regimes in Australia. And earlier up on his arrival at the hotel, Prime Minister Narendra Modi received a warm and rousing welcome from members of the Indian diaspora.
The visuals that you can see, people gathered at the venue waving Indian flags, chanting patriotic slogans and cheering for the Prime Minister.
Sharing moments from the welcome, the Prime Minister in a social media post said that the weather in Melbourne may be cold, but the warmth of the welcome from the Indian community was truly unforgettable.
He added that their affection, unwavering bond with India continues to be a source of immense joy and pride. Prime Minister Narendra Modi witnessed a truly exceptional musical performance featuring Australia's ancient Diaspora and India's tabla. PM Modi termed the harmony between these two timeless instruments as beautifully reflecting the deep cultural connect between the two nations.
Prime Minister also complimented renowned Aboriginal musician Ron Murray and acclaimed Australian tabla player Dr. Sam Evans for their dedication to preserving and celebrating musical traditions.
Dr. Evans has spent years training in India, is known for promoting Indian classical music in Australia.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi also witnessed a performance by the 10-piece Australia-India Orchestra that presented a symphonic rendition of Ma Tujhe Salam by Indian music maestro A.R. Rahman.
Led by Suraj Nagaraj, the co-founder and chief conductor of Australia-India Orchestra, the ensemble showcased a unique blend of Indian musical traditions and Western classical orchestration. Prime Minister said the performance beautifully demonstrated how music strengthens the bonds between our people.
PM complimented every member of the orchestra for their memorable performance and said that it is also something that shows the global popularity of Vande Mataram, India's national song, particularly at a time when India is marking its 150th anniversary.
And Prime Minister Narendra Modi, upon his arrival, also witnessed a captivating Kathak performance led by Melbourne-based dancer Sanchita Abrol. The presentation depicted a spiritual journey through truth, transformation and transcendence, beginning with Astorma Sadgamay, followed by energetic Shiv Tandav and concluding with Om Namah Shivaya.
Prime Minister Modi said that he was glad to see Indian dancers becoming popular across Australia. So the Indian diaspora always takes pride in the way it celebrates Indian identity and Indian culture in Australia. Glimpses of that on your screens. As Prime Minister Narendra Modi witnessed cultural performances, we also saw a blend between Indian arts and Australian arts. And we are now getting inputs. I understand a statement is expected, Shubhendu.
Yes, former Prime Minister Scott Morrison met Prime Minister Narendra Modi earlier, and we'll just listen into what he had to say.
We were able to elevate it to the level it's now at, and I'm very pleased that that's been maintained by the Albanese government. And this relationship is only going to get stronger. And the Prime Minister's visit here to Melbourne, I think, is incredibly important. Equally, there's a technology sharing, a scale, an industrial supply chain relationship with India, new sectors like space, technology, data, and so on. There's so much going on in India. I think the Australia-India relationship is vital to the security of the Indo-Pacific region. It provides, I think, a strategic anchor. We have leadership responsibilities that we must continue to share, and our comprehensive strategic partnership reflects that. I saw Prime Minister Modi in Delhi a few months back, and wonderful to see him again and been able to spend a lot more time here, and it was very generous of him to invite me to Melbourne to do that. So it's always good to see him. He's always full of ideas, full of energy, and it was wonderful to be part.
And joining us for Perspective now are Ambassador Anil Wadhwa, former senior diplomat, former Indian ambassador, and Dr. Rajan Kumar, who is a professor in the School of International Studies, JNU. Such a pleasure to have the two gentlemen here on the screens. Well, Ambassador Wadhwa, I'll begin with you. We just saw Scott Morrison speaking, and I remember when Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in Australia, or Scott Morrison was to visit India, there was a time I remember images of Scott Morrison that he had posted with khichdi, saying that this is the favorite dish of the Prime Minister. Today we saw how the body language was between Anthony Albanese and Prime Minister Narendra Modi when both of them clicked a selfie together. And we've seen "You are the boss," these words by Anthony Albanese when he had hosted Prime Minister earlier in Australia. So we've seen those light moments in this relationship. What do you make of this camaraderie and the fact that across governments in Australia, this relationship has only gone from strength to strength, starting with Tony Abbott in 2014 when Prime Minister paid his first bilateral and also multilateral visit to Australia?
Well, yes. So the leadership between between the two countries has always enjoyed excellent relationships, and I think Scott Morrison embodies that kind of a spirit which is there between the two leaderships. And Prime Minister Modi has been the common factor on the Indian side, whereas there has been changes in the prime ministers on the Australian side. But with all of them, he has had a personal rapport. And starting with Prime Minister Tony Abbott during Prime Minister Modi's first visit to Australia in 2015, to Scott Morrison and now Prime Minister Albanese. All of them have paid special attention to taking forward the India-Australia relationship. There's also been some tailwinds, of course, because we've had a favorable geopolitical environment in which the relationship has been allowed to prosper. And it's become a necessity in today's context to make sure that we continue to improve on this relationship, and both the leaders on both sides have been working continuously to make sure that that happens. And we are fortunate that we are in this situation today because the relationship has become even more comprehensive, in keeping with the partnership which we have traditionally with Australia.
Right, Dr. Rajan Kumar, good morning. Shubhendu here. We've seen the manner in which India-Australia ties have been energized in the recent years, so whether it is at the bilateral level or regional Indo-Pacific. Your opening thoughts on the significance of this partnership that India has in the region?
Thank you, Shubhendu, for having me here. I think this relationship has grown stronger over the last 15 years, if I see. It started, as you know, with Prime Minister Modi's visit in 2014, and after more than 10 years, he is visiting This is his third visit to Australia. In my view, there are a number of issues which are extremely important from both the countries' perspective. The first and foremost is the changing geopolitical flux that you see, the behavior of America, the way America is behaving. So that is creating a lot of uncertainty in the Indo-Pacific. And many of the countries, they are looking for some kind of stability in the region, be it India's, Indonesia, Japan, Australia, etc. So they are, instead of depending completely upon the United States, they are looking for regional partners which can ensure stability in the region. So arc of stability in the Indo-Pacific becomes, in my view, the most important factor. Added to that is the momentum given to the economic partnership. We signed the Comprehensive Economic Partnership, and then ECTA, Economic and Cooperation Trade Partnership, that we signed, which is like a free trade partnership with Australia. And now it is working in the sense January 2026, the tariffs are gone, 100% tariffs on Indian exports and 70% and a little different on Indian goods going to Australia. So that shows the maturity of relationship between the two countries, and then there are different layers of relationship, and which you rightly pointed out. One is the bilateral aspect, but they are also cooperating when it comes to multilateralism, say for instance in the Quad, also in other different forums, international global forums, etc. This also a leaders summit. So leaders annual summit that again adds a new momentum to the relationship when you have an annual summit format meeting with another country. So that shows the kind of the strengthening of relationship between the two countries.
And Dr. Kumar, India has that kind of arrangement of leaders summit with very few countries. So in that sense, that also makes this relationship unique, does it not?
Absolutely, because if you see the annual summit format meeting, I see only the two, three countries with which you have with Russia, with a very long time in the last since 2020. You also have with Japan, and now you have this annual summit meeting format. So if it takes place regularly, and actually if you have this kind of institutional partnership, that shows the kind of the trust that we share on strategic issues, on the issue of trade, on the issue of comprehensive partnership, etc. So in that shows a very institutionalized partnership, which will have a long-term future if you have this kind of relationship. So in that context, I see India-Australia going stronger to stronger. Yeah.
Right. Ambassador, there was a time in the mid 2015, I should say, when the first move was made on Quad, and after that we saw how Australia had developed cold feet, and then this was something that was suspended more or less, but then it revived in a bigger way. But is this a different Australia, would you say? How would you see this visit in the context of the Indo-Pacific, also the expectations in the defense and maritime security domain, the way things are currently, and given the dynamics in the region, where do you see this headed during the visit of the Prime Minister?
You're absolutely right about the origins of the Quad. There was an attempt made in 2007, 2008 to meet together and to discuss a common agenda which would take us all forward. But at that point in time, the dependency of Australia on China was quite heavy. It still remains a heavy dependency. But meanwhile, because of Chinese interference in Australian politics, which we saw after 2014-15 in particular, the Quad came together again in 2017. Since that has not looked back. Obviously, because the threat perception from China have stayed, and even today, in today's context, when there is a readjustment as far as the United States and China relationship is concerned.
Yes, I think we're losing your audio, Ambassador Wadhwa. Can I take this? Yes, please. Go ahead.
Countries, especially India, Australia, Japan, remain the same. Yeah.
Right.
So I think because of that reason, we've had a revival of the Quad, and it is now working through its working groups. The Indo-Pacific agenda remains alive as far as India and Australia are concerned, and they also have shared concerns in the Pacific. So I think as far as defense and security is concerned, we have a solid basis to go forward.
A news is coming in. Australian Super will deepen its commitment to investments and partnership with India. We're looking at some updates coming in. India's National Investment and Infrastructure Fund with a further Australian dollars 500 million, taking the fund's overall holding in India across all assets classes to about 3.3 billion Australian dollars.
The new investment announced today follows an original NIIF commitment of $240 million in 2019, which has been one of the fund's biggest and best performing infrastructure assets for Australian Super members.
And lauding the move, Prime Minister Modi in his post says that India welcomes the 500 million Australian dollars investment from Australian Super announced by Chief Executive Paul Shodha this morning in Melbourne. He said this is yet another glimpse of the global confidence in India's growth and reform trajectory. Australian Super is an investment firm. It also reflects the immense opportunities that our dynamic economy offers to global investors. The NIIF was established in 2015 to attract investors from around the world to deploy capital into infrastructure developments in India.
Right. Dr. Kumar, how do you view this development? Is it welcome considering that India has been going all out to attract investment from around the world, and this would be investment in Indian infrastructure, and this comes particularly after the Prime Minister addressed the CEO's forum and the economic roadmap business meeting?
Absolutely. The one thing that India is looking for from all the countries in the world, major countries which have the capacity to invest, that is investment. Because we are looking for FDI, and the commercial and trade relations, as I said, that relationship is very strong between the two countries. We have a trade of, say, roughly 24 to 26 billion dollars. Yes, we export a little less, 8 to 9 billion dollars. But yeah, what I'm trying to say that investment from Australia is very welcome, and also we are trying to invest in Australia, especially in the rare earth and critical mineral sector. If one of the important aspects of this particular visit is the focus on rare earth and accessing accessing critical minerals from Australia. As you know, Australia is very rich in those resources, and both the countries, they are aware of the possible disruption of supply chain in the future in case there is a escalation of geopolitical conflict in which China is involved. So under those circumstances, these countries would like to ensure that the supply chain is not disrupted. So Australia is investing in different sectors in India, and there is a huge possibility of cooperation between the two countries. Let me tell you, if Australian investors come to India, so infrastructure is certainly one, semiconductor and other industries, that those are very important, but also in education, also in what you call agriculture, because Australian agriculture is very well developed, and technology sharing. And one of the important aspects is technology sharing between the two countries, because Australians have very advanced technology in some of the sectors. So we'll welcome any kind of investment from Australia, and also we're willing to invest in Australia.
Right. Ambassador Anil Wadhwa, in your intervention, you were talking about the Indo-Pacific. Now, I want to refer to some events that have happened in the recent times. I think just yesterday, President Donald Trump of the US, while commenting on a host of issues, spoke about his great rapport with Chinese leader Xi Jinping and how he admires his sort of work ethic and his worldview. At the same time, if we look at Prime Minister Modi's engagements in the recent weeks, he appears to have met all the three Quad leaders now. He met President Donald Trump at a side meeting at the G7 in France. The Japanese Prime Minister came home to India, and now he already has exchanged thoughts with Australian Prime Minister. Now my question, sir, is that given the current realities, especially the American dilution of their engagement, investments into the Quad setup, is the reality changing for the remaining three partners, namely India, Japan and Australia? And do you think that will also be articulated by leaders in this meeting?
Yes, quite clearly. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think the reality is changing on the ground, and that's because of the adjustment that the United States is trying to make in its outlook as far as China is concerned. Obviously, any adjustment with China affects how the Quad functions going forward. We've also seen a reflection of that in the change of terminology of the command forces of the United States in the region. And also the commitment at the leadership level as far as the United States is concerned. I think the change has been noticed quite clearly by the remaining partners. They are now committed to work together upon themselves. They've taken that mantle upon themselves to take forward the cooperation which they feel is important within the Quad, but also bilaterally. And this was reflected in what we saw in the visit of Prime Minister of Japan, which happened only recently. And now Prime Minister Modi is in Australia. You will see more a strengthening of that partnership going forward. We will probably see a new roadmap on maritime security. We will also see possible upgrades on the 2009 bilateral cooperation agreement in defense between India and Australia. And a new view on how to take forward the already existing relationship, the security and the defense relationship. So I think the remaining Quad partners are quite aware of this possibility, but they know that they have challenges and they have to make sure that they are up to it in the coming days and years.
Right. Taking the point forward, Ambassador, can we say that now the resident Indian Ocean powers like India and Australia are taking more ownership of the Quad and of the Indo-Pacific region? We've always spoken of ASEAN centrality here, but do you think that now it is time and probably a decision has been taken to play a more central role in the Indo-Pacific without other powers like the United States?
Absolutely, because the burden has shifted to the residential countries within the Quad, and they know that they have to take over the mantle of this responsibility and work more closely together to make sure that their threat perceptions are mitigated as much as possible by working closely with each other. So we will see more of that in the coming months, I'm sure.
Right. Dr. Rajan, you were mentioning about critical minerals a short while back. I want to draw your attention to uranium. We know that there has been a uranium supply agreement between India and Australia for some years now, but it hasn't really come into effect, even though technically it is in effect. It has been ratified by the Australian Parliament. Do you think that for civil nuclear uses in India, as India seeks to diversify its energy resources like the rest of the world and wants resilient supply chains, it is now time to reactivate that agreement? And what are the issues that have been holding Australia back? Are there trust issues? Are there safeguard related issues? And do you think that those roadblocks can be addressed now?
No, I think one of the key concerns was when that India had not signed the nuclear supply group, that agreement it had earlier. But after that, most of the technical issues have been removed, and India needs a huge amount of uranium. We are having around 27 nuclear reactors, and for which you need uranium, and our capacity is only 400 something, and we need 25,000. So for that, we are looking for different partners. I think we have to revive this this relationship of getting uranium from Australia and also other countries. Let me tell you that in 2026, this year only, we signed a very important deal with Kazakhstan, which has again a very rich uranium. So we are trying to get from the countries which are willing to supply. Canada used to be the traditional supplier, as all of you know. So Canada, Kazakhstan, Australia, and some other countries which are willing to supply. But yes, uranium is a very important aspect because we are trying to shift from this what you call the traditional energy, coal and oil, to other areas of energy, renewable energy, etc., in which cooperation with Australia becomes very important, just because of the technology sharing and also the kind of trust that we have built up over the years. And now Australia should not have any problem. And there were two issues. One was this because India was not a legally recognized nuclear power, and the second was the issue of liability, etc. And in the Parliament we have passed a bill which has modified all the previous clauses. So with that, there is a huge possibility of importing uranium from Australia, and also processed uranium from that, not just this what you call mineral, but also processed uranium. That's a possibility, yes.
Right. We are on standby, in fact, for a ceremonial welcome that would be accorded to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He is in Melbourne, Australia, in a short while from now. The delegation level exchanges will also happen. We'll bring you those updates as they come in. Ambassador Anil Wadhwa, staying with this trade in minerals, apart from uranium, if we look at India's own requirement for critical minerals, for critical technologies, rare earth minerals, lithium, cobalt, Australia has significant deposits of. India's own semiconductor assembly and manufacturing supply chain is gaining momentum. Just a few days ago, Prime Minister inaugurated a semiconductor manufacturing plant in Sanand, Gujarat. So looking at the close friendship between the two countries, how do you see the two sort of energizing each other in as far as their own respective strengths are concerned in this domain of semiconductors and critical minerals?
So I think both sides have been talking about this issue for many years now. Essentially, what is required is to invest in each other in all the four stages of making use of the supply of critical minerals from Australia. Now, what Australia would like to do is to see India set up an ecosystem which is conducive for the processing of the raw materials and at the same time for transfer of technology, the proper compensation which is required, because most of the players in Australia are private players. So we need more investments in this field, either in India or in Australia. And Australia would rather see processing happen in India than in Australia because it's a polluting industry. Also because of the proximity of the end users, which happens to be in India. We need to set up an ecosystem here for that purpose. And for Australian companies to invest in the mining sector and the processing of the critical minerals in India, you need certain conditionalities. The Australian government has preferred a white paper for this so that it becomes easier for their companies to come into India to invest, co-invest rather, and at the same time take place the transfer of technology and processing can take place on a shared basis. So I think we need to make progress in that respect. I expect that during this visit we will see more progress in that regard. And India has moved quite a bit and because of the older archaic laws which are there in the mining sector in India have been continuously revised over the past 2 or 3 years. But I think we need much more to be done domestically and also be prepared to invest much more in the interim in the Australian critical mineral sector.
Absolutely. In fact, Shubhendu, there's so much of rare earths and critical minerals that India requires to make its transition fully to electric vehicles and green mobility particularly.
Deposits. Now we're taking you live to Australia.
औपचारिक तौर पर प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी का स्वागत करते हुए एंथनी एल्बनीज़ी
accorded to Prime Minister Narendra Modi at Government House in Victoria, the official Melbourne residence of the Governor-General of Australia. And this is expected to be followed by a meeting with the Governor, signing a visitor's book, a tete-a-tete with the Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, who you can see on your screens along with Prime Minister Modi. This is expected to be followed by the annual Leaders Summit and press statements marking the 3rd India-Australia Annual Summit.
Those visuals of Prime Minister Narendra Modi being accorded Guard of Honour at the Government House, seat of the government in Victoria, Melbourne, Australia. Prime Minister Narendra Modi on a 3-day visit to Australia, being accorded the Guard of Honour. This also marks the beginning of more formal engagements of Prime Minister in Australia, now joined by Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. Prime Minister Albanese is introducing his cabinet and team to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. These visuals are coming in live from Melbourne.
The focus now slowly shifts to the third India-Australia annual summit. Remember, this is the highest institutional mechanism as far as partnership between India and Australia goes, and it is expected that both the leaders that you see on your screens, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his host, Prime Minister of Australia Anthony Albanese, will be reviewing the cooperation and partnership across all areas of cooperation between the two countries, be it defence and maritime security, or trade and investment, or people-to-people ties, or critical minerals, or newer areas of cooperation like technologies, clean energy, critical minerals and rare earths, space cooperation, nuclear energy cooperation, tourism, education. They're all expected to figure in the talks between the two sides. This is a very vibrant relationship. This is Prime Minister Narendra Modi's third visit to Australia in terms of bilateral visits. He had first visited in 2014, then in 2023, and now in 2026. And those were all very, very dynamic visits, where the Prime Minister had even earlier on addressed the joint session of Australian Parliament and also address the Indian community members. We'll see more of that in terms of interaction with the Indian community. Now, of course, Prime Minister Narendra Modi introducing Prime Minister Albanese to members of the Indian delegation. We can see National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, Vikram Misri, India's Foreign Secretary and other members of the Indian delegation. Prime Minister Modi introducing his Australian counterpart to them.
Those are visuals coming in live from Melbourne. More formal engagements have begun after Guard of Honour accorded to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. There was an introduction to the respective delegation. From here on, Prime Minister has more formal engagements. There's a meeting with the Governor. There's also a brief tete-a-tete with the Australian Prime Minister, followed by annual Leaders Summit.
The two principals now are moving for further engagements. Also, you can see Margaret Gardner, the Governor of Victoria, on the screens. Another two leaders head for a tete-a-tete, followed by annual Leaders Summit and press statements between the two sides. Again, a very important visit insofar as India's partnership with Australia is concerned, and also from the regional perspective, as both are resident powers of the Indo-Pacific and both are Quad partners as well.
That's right. The day started early for the two leaders. They participated with business leaders in a CEO forum meet, and thereafter we saw those live visuals coming in from Melbourne, from in front of the Government House in Victoria, Melbourne, where Prime Minister was accorded a ceremonial welcome, and now more formal engagements begin. Ambassador Anil Vadhava and Dr. Rajan Kumar continue to be with us. Dr. Kumar, let me come to you. I mean, in line with what we were talking about, the need to reorient vis-a-vis the Indo-Pacific policy of the three countries in particular, Japan, India and Australia. In that context, what happens at the bilateral level as far as the defence partnership between India and Australia is concerned, that becomes significant. And Ambassador Vadhava earlier also mentioned about how the 2009 Joint Declaration on Defence and Security Cooperation is due for upgrade, and there is also maritime security collaboration roadmap that the leaders could ponder over. What are your thoughts on it, sir?
I think the way, even though we have been cooperating, there was a very established framework that for political economic thing we were discussing in the Quad, and also security, the larger security we were discussing in the Quad. And for military aspect, we also had bilateral agreement, plus you had this what you call Malabar exercises, etc. So it was very established format. But what has happened that because of the Trump's unpredictability and the Quad meeting, which was supposed to take place, has not taken place, and instead he visited China. So that has created some kind of doubt that whether he's how serious is United States is about this Quad. And also Trump administration is putting pressure on Japan to have its own military and kind of putting other pressures also. So that has created a massive uncertainty among the countries which were largely dependent on United States. And I'm talking about three countries in a specific here. One is Japan, second is South Korea, and third is Australia. So they want stability because the way China is expanding, Chinese influence is expanding, and the kind of assertive policy that China is following in Taiwan, but also in what we call this Indo-Pacific region. So navigation becomes an important aspect, and South China Sea, and because this trade, most of the trade of Australia, India, and many other countries, they pass through the Strait of Malacca, then go to South China Sea. So that has become a major security concern. So these countries, let me tell you that Australia will remain dependent on the United States for a long time. The kind of agreement, AUKUS, etc., that it has signed,
Yes.
so it is hugely dependent on United States. So we should not discount Australia's dependence on that. Also, let me tell you, Australia will continue to have strong economic ties with China, despite all the hiccups and security concerns that you have. But beyond that, they are looking for stability. Stability with the countries which can play a role in some kind of putting pressure on China not to be assertive in the South China Sea. And in that context, India becomes extremely important, and also ASEAN. And Munmun was talking about ASEAN centrality, etc. So ASEAN again will remain central from in that region because they are the important blocks. ASEAN is the important block in that region. So the cooperation, as you see, that Prime Minister visited Indonesia. Indonesia is the most populous country of ASEAN, and then he visited this Australia. And before that, we had the bilateral meeting with Japan. And before that, if I just take you, that there was a meeting in Seychelles. So if you see from the east of Africa to Australia, so India is trying to consolidate its ties with several countries in the Indo-Pacific region. In fact, the entire month, the focus of India's foreign policy in last 1 month has been on Indo-Pacific.
An ocean diplomacy, as it were, sir, Indo-Pacific and West Indian Ocean. So ocean diplomacy, maritime security and shared concerns appear to dominate Prime Minister's engagement in these weeks, as you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Last, right from the Seychelles, if you see the Indian Ocean region, and then this meeting with Japan, then going to Indonesia, and with Indonesia, we have signed very important deals, let me tell you. When you are willing to provide BrahMos to that country, and having that, and again also related to some critical minerals, etc., with Indonesia, because Indonesia is also rich in several resources like bauxite, tin, etc. So that shows some kind of we are working on a slightly different strategy, that we are not saying that we will not have strong ties with the United States. And it is also, let me tell you, I think Trump is likely to be an aberration in the larger Indo-Pacific perspective, because if US wants to remain an important player in the region, so US cannot discount China as a factor, and US will have to rely on countries like India, Japan, and Australia. So things are going to get better, I think, after this, but for the next 2-3 years, you will find some kind of uncertainty will prevail, and these countries, smaller countries, there's middle powers, and the countries like Japan, Australia, they'll look for some kind of stability till the time Trump administration is there.
Right.